Jesus is on his way. He's leaving Jericho. He's going to another town. And in Mark's gospel, you hear a lot of Jesus traveling, and he's always walking on the way. That's one of the themes of Mark. Jesus going toward the culmination of his ministry, which would be the crucifixion. But today I want to talk about St. Justin Martyr and the first reading. The first reading is just so, well, again, it's written by SIRACH. SIRACH is wisdom literature written by Jews who were Hellenized, living in the Hellenistic territories after the diaspora from Jerusalem. And they took it to themselves, those who authored Sirach and his family, there was a family tradition there, to look around and say, God gave us all this. Now, it's not written anywhere. I mean, they know it because they obviously can look and see. They see water, rain, sun, and they say, God gave us all this. We should put it in writing to remind people after us that everything we have comes from God. So today's section, he's recalling God's good works and what he has seen. And he says, I'm going to describe them. And he goes on, we heard it, the earth, he plumbs the depths of the seas. He gives us the secrets in the forests. He talks about everything that was made and the reason it was made so people could enjoy them and understand them. And nobody, he's saying, nobody makes things like this. These are fantastic. These are God's gifts to us, and he makes all of them so we can enjoy them and give him glory. And the responsorial psalm picks that up, Psalm 32, by the word of the Lord, the heavens were made. And then it goes on to say, let's give thanks to the Lord. Now, the Psalms were written around 1000, Book of Sirach, a little older, maybe another 100 years before that. But the Jews had nothing to go on. Like, they had no books, they had no Torah. They had the Torah, but they didn't have any of the books that they could read and understand. So their minds, the intellect of Sirach and his son, put it all down. And all practical wisdom, all appreciation for what God has given us. Not directly related is Saint Justin, whose feast day we celebrate today. Justin is called an apologist, an early martyr, died around 168. He used his intellect, and I think that's the balance with the two readings, the intellect that he had to understand philosophy, because he was a layperson and he was a philosopher, to understand the role of God in creation. And once he started looking at the Christians and what they do, especially the Mass, he started writing about it in a way that was more intellectual than spiritual, but very spiritual writings, very theological writings, talking about the Mass, talking about God's role in creation, talking about how we take our energy and life from God as Christians. Eventually, he becomes a Christian and an apologist. And during the reign of Marcus Aurelius, around 180, 190, he dies. He's decapitated. He's martyred. Martyred for doing the right thing, martyred for believing in God and seeing God present in creation, but most importantly, in the Christian community, and in that, most importantly, in the Eucharist. So he took practical, just like Sirach, he took practical observations and applied them faithfully and gave it all over to God. Sirach does the same thing. Sirach, the Most High possesses all knowledge and sees from end to end all things to come. Again, practical knowledge applied to his faith, giving praise to God. In many ways, and Justin did other things too, wrote other writings. But the fact that we have a saint who used his practical information to get to God is very important. That's our tradition. That's our tradition as Catholics. We don't say we're not in the world. We're in the world, but we're not of the world. So it's up to us as Christians to understand the world. And in some ways, the world is going through a pretty hard time. But, I didn't live 500 years ago. I think 500 years ago, maybe the world was also in hard times. And Christians were struggling with their faith. Why? Because the world was infringing on us and telling us which way to go. And I guess today we call that politics. And the stronger politics, negative politics, pull us away from the church, pull us away from what we believe, and bring in other elements of learning. One of the key elements that's been brought into our society is the rise of Satanism, the rise of believing and worshiping and following Satan. Well, the church has been at odds with Satan since creation, but it's becoming more popular. I don't want to say it's becoming popular with the youth. It's becoming popular. But it's an overt slap in the face to our Christian faith. Now, if we sit by and do nothing and do not promulgate our faith by publicly addressing Catholic issues, praying out loud, praying in public, then we're just going to succumb to the current times. And Justin gives us an example. You stand up for your faith, and you're going to be martyred. Now, that's certainly not an encouragement on some levels. Stand up for what you believe, and you'll have your head chopped off. And literally, that is happening throughout the world. The Catholic Church in certain countries is they're trying to annihilate us. And more, there's a rise of anti-Catholicism, but flavored with Satanism. But that's clear. It's Satan inspiring people to rebel against God. Well, God's people, the Catholic Church, Satan is rising to encourage those people, members of the Catholic Church, to rise against their faith. And that's why we as a church are going through very challenging times. Less people in our churches, less vocations, less people responding. Now, you think that's because of their own individual choices? No, I think it's their individual choices that are being formulated by the current times, the way of society. That's what Justin fought against. That's what the book of Sirach is fighting against. And while they're fighting against that, they're reminding us, use your head. Examine your faith. Examine creation. Find out who put all this together. And then when you find out that it's God, worship Him. Worship Him as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.